Chosen one, there is something stirring within you right now that goes deeper than thought and reaches beyond logic. It feels less like an idea and more like a quiet recognition, as though something you have always carried is finally stepping into the light. You were guided to this moment for a reason, and what is unfolding here is not the result of chance. There is something your spirit has been waiting to understand, and the timing for that understanding has finally arrived. Some people will hear these words and simply move on with their day. Others will feel something much deeper, because this message touches a place they have been carrying for a very long time. From the outside, they seem steady, capable, even calm, yet beneath the surface they are holding a weight that was never meant to stay with them this long. Deep inside, beyond explanation, they already know that something in their life is ready to shift. If you recognize yourself in that feeling, then stay close to what follows. This is not a moment for hesitation or gentle reminders. There is something you have carried since the beginning of your life that may hold more meaning than you ever realized. Look at your dominant hand, the one you use every day, and pay attention to the lines that cross through the center of your palm. For some people, those lines seem to form the shape of an M. It may not appear perfectly drawn, yet when you truly look, it stands out in a way that is difficult to ignore. If you see that shape, allow yourself to listen carefully, because what follows may connect to questions you have carried for years. It may even speak to the distance you have always felt between the life you are living and the life you sensed was possible. The people who carry this kind of calling are often the ones who spend the longest time unaware of it. Not because they lacked wisdom or understanding, but because no one ever helped them see the full picture. They moved through life using only part of what was available to them, doing their best with the awareness they had. Their faith was real, their effort was real, yet there was still something missing from the equation. What if the door was never locked at all? What if it had been standing open, waiting for someone to point toward it? That is the purpose of this message. There are 5 signs that often appear in people who carry this deeper sense of purpose, and recognizing them can change the way you understand both your past and the road ahead. As each one is named, pay attention to more than your thoughts. Notice what stirs inside you, because sometimes your spirit recognizes truth before your mind catches up. If this message feels like it found you at the right moment, type 777 in the comments. Let that simple act become a way of acknowledging what you already sense inside yourself. The first sign is a feeling you may have carried for most of your life, a quiet pull towards something you could never fully explain. It was never tied to a job title, a status symbol, or someone else's version of success. It felt more like an invitation toward a life that existed just beyond the horizon of what you could see. You felt it in moments that should have felt complete. You felt it during ordinary mornings, when everything appeared fine on the surface. Yet something inside you remained awake and searching. There was always a subtle awareness that you were meant to grow into something larger than your current circumstances. Even when you tried to dismiss it, the feeling stayed with you. You did what many people do. You practiced gratitude, focused on what was in front of you, and tried to convince yourself that the longing would eventually fade, yet it never truly disappeared. Gratitude was always meant to walk beside growth, never replace it. The pull you have carried all these years has been guiding you, quietly pointing towards something your soul already recognizes. The second sign is the deep sense that there is more within you than your current life has been able to express. This is not about seeking attention or proving your worth to anyone. It is about capacity. There is a depth inside you that has often felt larger than the spaces you have been living in, and many times you have completed what was expected of you, only to wonder if there was something more waiting beyond it. You learned how to fit in. You learned how to make yourself comfortable inside structures that never fully reflected who you were. At times, you even mistook shrinking for humility. Yet true humility has never required you to hide the gifts placed within you. The distance between the person you sense yourself to be and the person visible to the world has existed for a reason, and that distance is beginning to change. The third sign is a kind of heaviness that comes from seeing and feeling more than most people realize. You walk into a room and sense the atmosphere before anyone speaks. You notice unspoken emotions, hidden tensions, and silent struggles that others overlook. Often you carry those impressions with you long after everyone else has moved on. For years you may have wondered why your sensitivity feels so intense. The answer is not weakness. It is not a flaw that needs fixing. You were created to notice things that require a deeper level of awareness, and that awareness comes with a cost when it is not understood. What has felt like a burden may actually be a gift that has never been given the support it needed. When a person carries this level of sensitivity without guidance, even their strengths can begin to feel exhausting. The answer has never been to shut the gift down. The answer is learning how to carry it in a way that brings clarity rather than depletion. What you need is a new relationship with what you have been carrying all along. The fourth sign is this. You have endured experiences that could have easily shattered another person, yet somehow through every loss, every disappointment, and every season when the ground seemed to disappear beneath your feet, you kept moving forward. Those experiences changed you, but they also shaped something within you that cannot be seen from the outside. There were seasons when everything familiar seemed to fall away. There were betrayals that came from people you trusted, and moments when the future offered no visible path at all. Yet even through those chapters, something inside you continued to hold on, growing stronger in places no one else could fully see. That strength did not arrive overnight. It was formed in the dark, one difficult season at a time, and still, after everything you have walked through, you are here. You may not feel perfectly whole, and some of the pieces of your story may still carry scars, yet you have remained standing through seasons that could have easily taken away your strength. The endurance you carry was not learned from comfort. It was shaped in the quiet places where no one could see the battles you were fighting, and where faith became something deeper than words. There is a kind of resilience that only comes through being tested. The seasons that felt like they were tearing everything apart were also shaping something powerful within you. Each time you found a way forward when the circumstances suggested there should be none, something lasting was being built into your character. Your survival was never random. Every difficult chapter added something essential to the person you are becoming. Now consider the fifth sign. Look once more at the center of your palm and notice the lines that have always been there. For some people, those lines form the shape of an M, a mark that many traditions have associated with deep intuition, uncommon perception, and a life that carries a greater sense of purpose. The significance is not about feeling elevated above others. It is about recognizing something that has quietly existed within you all along. Perhaps the most important realization is that you have been carrying this without fully understanding it. What has remained hidden is beginning to come into focus, and the timing of that awareness matters. This lack of recognition was never caused by weakness, failure, or a lack of devotion. There are deeper layers within a person, places beneath conscious effort, where certain truths can remain dormant until the right moment arrives for them to be seen. Many people reach adulthood feeling disconnected from something they cannot quite name. The openness, wonder, and inner clarity that felt natural in earlier years often become buried beneath responsibility, pressure, and survival. Gradually, the distance between who they know themselves to be and the life they are actually living begins to widen. The longing remains, but the connection feels harder to access. That is why so many people carry an unexplained sense that something is missing. They feel capable of more, yet they cannot always understand why the fuller version of themselves seems just out of reach. The most difficult part is that they often blame themselves for that distance. Yet what they are experiencing is not proof that something is broken. It is the feeling of being separated from a deeper level of their own potential. I want you to think about Joseph for a moment, not as a simple story, but as a real person living through uncertainty. He carried a vision of his future long before anyone else could understand it. The very thing that made him different also brought rejection, isolation, and hardship again and again. Circumstances seemed to push him farther away from the future he sensed within himself. Imagine what it must have felt like for him in those darkest moments. He knew there was something significant on his life, yet every visible sign seemed to contradict it. The pit, the betrayal, the imprisonment, each stage could have convinced him that the dream had failed. Yet what looked like abandonment was actually preparation. The wisdom, strength, and perspective he would later need were being formed long before anyone could see the outcome. When the moment finally arrived, Joseph stepped into it, carrying everything those difficult seasons had built inside him. Nothing had been wasted. The waiting had meaning. The years that felt hidden were shaping the very qualities that would allow him to stand where he was destined to stand. The timing had always been moving toward that moment, even when it appeared still. There is something in that story that may feel familiar to you. You may have spent years carrying an awareness that others did not understand. You may have felt that the very thing that made you different also made life more complicated. At times, it may have seemed as though your gifts created distance instead of opportunity, leaving you caught between what you sensed and what you could actually step into. Yet the deeper question has never been whether the calling is real. The question has been why the clarity has taken so long to arrive. Sometimes there is a gap between what the soul recognizes and what the mind is ready to embrace. Sometimes awareness unfolds in stages, and what felt delayed was quietly developing beneath the surface the entire time. That brings us to something important about identity. There are moments when seeing yourself accurately changes everything. Not because you become someone new, but because you finally recognize what has been there all along. When that recognition settles in, the path ahead often becomes clearer than it has ever been. The first identity is the seer. This is the person who notices what others miss, who senses the atmosphere of a room before anyone speaks, and who often understands people more deeply than they realize. You have likely experienced moments when you felt the truth of a situation long before there was evidence to explain it. What you carry is not fear or overthinking. It is a form of perception that becomes powerful when it is understood and guided with wisdom. A person with this gift often spends years questioning it, dismissing it, or trying to make it smaller. Some learn to ignore what they sense, while others become overwhelmed by it. The real invitation is neither suppression nor overwhelm. It is learning how to trust what you perceive and allow that awareness to become clear, grounded, and purposeful. The second identity is the cycle breaker. Long before you could explain it, there was something inside you that recognized certain patterns were never meant to continue. Whether they came through family, upbringing, or generations before you, you carried a quiet determination that some things would end with you. You may not have had the words for it then, but your spirit already knew what your mind would only understand years later. The burden of a cycle breaker is that much of the work happens where no one can see it. People notice that you question things others accept without thought. They notice that you refuse to settle into unhealthy patterns simply because they are familiar. What they often fail to see is the healing taking place beneath the surface. The difficult inner work that is changing not only your life, but the lives that will follow after yours. What makes you different is not a flaw in your design. It is part of the reason you are here. The third identity is the wounded healer. The hardships you have endured were never meaningless, and the pain you carried did not leave empty-handed. Every wound you refused to let define you, every loss that slowly transformed into wisdom, and every season that tested you without hardening your heart added something valuable to who you are becoming. There are lessons that can only be learned by walking through the fire and emerging with compassion still intact. The wounded healer serves others from a place of understanding that cannot be taught through theory alone. Their strength comes from experience, from knowing what darkness feels like and discovering a way through it. The insight they carry was earned through endurance, reflection, and growth. What once felt like a burden gradually became a source of depth, capable of bringing light to others who are still finding their way. If any of these identities feel familiar, type the words "I see it" in the comments. not because a phrase holds power on its own, but because naming something true about yourself often helps that truth settle more deeply within you. Sometimes awareness begins as a thought, but it becomes real when it is acknowledged and embraced. Now take a moment to consider what happens when a person loses connection with parts of themselves that were meant to remain alive and active. The effects often appear in relationships first. A person can deeply care about those around them and still feel distant, as though a wall exists between what they feel inside and what they are able to express. The connection is present, yet the full depth of it struggles to reach the surface. You may find yourself physically present, while emotionally somewhere else. Conversations happen, responsibilities are met, and life continues moving forward, yet something essential feels missing. Relationships that once felt alive begin to feel routine. The people you love remain close, but the richness of connection you know is possible seems just beyond reach. This same disconnection often shows up in your energy. There is a tiredness that rest alone does not fully resolve, a sense that everything requires more effort than it once did. Tasks that were once natural begin to feel heavier, and moments of clarity seem harder to access. The flow that used to come naturally becomes interrupted by mental fog and constant effort. Beneath all of that is a deeper frustration. It is the feeling that your life has never fully reflected what you know is inside you. There has always been a space between the person you sense yourself becoming and the reality you wake up to each day. You feel the pull, you recognize the possibility, yet the bridge between the two can seem difficult to find. Before moving forward, take a breath and allow everything that has been spoken to settle. Being truly seen after years of carrying things in silence can stir unexpected emotions. Sometimes it feels like relief, sometimes it feels like grief for the years spent wondering if anyone would ever understand. Most often, it is a mixture of both. There is no need to rush through that feeling. Let it be present for a moment. The recognition itself matters because many people spend their entire lives waiting for someone to acknowledge what has always been true about them. Today, those hidden parts have been given language. What comes next is not complicated. It is not reserved for people with perfect routines, endless discipline, or ideal circumstances. The simplest practices are often the ones that create the deepest shifts because they invite awareness back into places that have been overlooked for years. Real change begins with attention, and attention begins with presence. The first practice starts with something you have carried your entire life. Hold your dominant hand in front of you and look carefully at the lines crossing the center of your palm. Give yourself a few moments of complete attention, not a quick glance, not a distracted observation, but genuine presence with something that has always been there waiting to be noticed. There is something meaningful about intentionally recognizing what has been overlooked. The simple act of paying attention can awaken parts of you that have been waiting quietly in the background. Awareness often begins this way, not with something new appearing, but with finally seeing what has been with you all along. Then speak these words slowly and with intention. Say, "I carry what God placed within me." Pause long enough to feel the meaning of it. Then say, "I am becoming aware of who I truly am." Finally, speak, "What has been sleeping within me is awakening now." Let each sentence settle before moving to the next, allowing the words to become more than sounds and begin to feel like recognition. The next step is simple, yet it is often the one people rush past. Give yourself 1 full minute of complete silence. Close your eyes, place both feet firmly on the floor, and allow the words you just spoke to settle instead of immediately moving on to the next distraction. What you have recognized needs space to take root, and silence creates that space. During that minute, thoughts will come and go. Let them move through without chasing them or arguing with them. This is not about achieving a perfect state of calm. It is about creating a quiet opening where awareness can sink deeper than the surface of the mind and begin settling into the rest of you. After the silence, choose one thing. Just one. Think about the version of yourself that sees clearly, breaks unhealthy patterns, and carries hard-earned wisdom. Then ask what that version of you would do today that fear has been avoiding. It may be a conversation you have delayed, a truth you need to speak, or a step you have sensed for a long time but have not yet trusted yourself to take. Name that action clearly and let it become your focus for the day ahead. The purpose is not to create a long list of improvements. The purpose is to give awareness somewhere practical to land. Small actions taken from a place of clarity often create deeper change than grand plans that never move beyond intention. Give yourself time with these practices before deciding what they mean. Many of the most important shifts happen quietly at first. What begins as a simple act of attention gradually becomes a new way of seeing yourself and responding to life. One of the greatest challenges for people who carry deep intuition is learning to trust what they already know. There are moments when the truth is present long before confidence arrives. You feel the answer somewhere inside you, yet hesitation steps in and begins questioning what your deeper awareness already recognized. That is why discernment matters. When a decision stands before you, pause before reacting and ask yourself a few honest questions. Does this choice move me closer to the life I have always sensed within me, or farther away from it? Am I responding from clarity, or am I allowing fear to disguise itself as wisdom? Then ask yourself something even simpler. If the younger version of you, before doubt and conditioning shaped your thinking, had to make this decision, what would they choose? That part of you still exists. Beneath the noise and expectations of the world, that original clarity remains alive and waiting to be heard. There will also be moments when your sensitivity feels heavy instead of helpful, days when you absorb too much, carry too much, or lose sight of yourself beneath the weight of everything happening around you. In those moments, stop where you are and come back to yourself before moving forward. Place one hand over your heart and take 3 slow breaths. With the first breath, receive. With the second, release. With the third, return. Return to the part of you that existed before pressure, before fear, and before the demands of the day began pulling your attention in every direction. These breaths are more than a pause. They are a reminder that you are allowed to come back to yourself whenever life becomes overwhelming. Sometimes all it takes is a few moments of presence to remember who you are beneath the noise. I want to share a story that may feel familiar. There was a woman who spent years being the person everyone depended on. In moments of crisis, she brought calm. In difficult situations, she saw things others missed. Yet, when the day grew quiet and no one needed anything from her, she felt an exhaustion she could not fully explain. For much of her life, she viewed her sensitivity as something she had to manage, rather than understand. Then one day, she encountered a perspective that helped her recognize herself in a new way. Instead of seeing her awareness as a burden, she began seeing it as part of how she was designed to move through the world. That shift changed more than she expected. She started making decisions from a deeper place of trust. She became more intentional about returning to herself when life became noisy. Over time, she realized that the distance she had always felt between who she was and who she wanted to be had begun to shrink. The circumstances around her had not transformed overnight. What changed was her relationship with herself. She stopped waiting for something outside her to explain her life and began paying attention to what had been quietly present all along. If this story resonates with you, type "I receive" in the comments. Let it be a simple acknowledgement that something meaningful connected with you today. Sometimes the act of recognizing truth is the first step toward living it. These practices are powerful because they support one another. Awareness begins the day with intention. Discernment protects that awareness through your choices, and moments of reset help you return whenever life pulls you away from yourself. Together they create a rhythm that gradually becomes natural. Over time, what once required effort begins to feel familiar. New habits become a new baseline, and that baseline changes how you move through the world. The person who has lived for years feeling disconnected from their deeper self may eventually realize they are no longer operating from that place at all. Before we continue, I want to pause and speak as plainly as possible. Strip away every symbol, every metaphor, and every label for a moment. At the center of everything we have explored is a simple truth about the human experience. You entered this world carrying far more capacity than you realized. As a child, curiosity flowed freely, imagination felt effortless, and possibility seemed endless. There was a natural openness in the way you saw life, a sense of wonder that did not need to be taught because it was already there. As the years passed, life slowly taught you to prioritize survival over wonder. Responsibilities grew heavier, expectations became louder, and countless small messages encouraged you to value practicality above imagination. Little by little, the part of you that analyzed, protected, and managed daily demands took center stage, while the part that dreamed, sensed, and saw beyond the obvious became quieter in the background. That deeper part of you never disappeared, it simply became harder to hear beneath the noise. Over time, the distance between the person you felt yourself to be and the person you were able to express each day became one of the defining tensions of your life. You sensed there was more within you, yet reaching it often felt frustratingly out of reach. So hear this clearly. You are not someone who failed to become who you were meant to be. The gifts, strengths, and depth you have always sensed are still present. What changed was your connection to them, the pull you have felt, the sensitivity you carry, the resilience forged through difficult seasons. All of it points to something that remains alive beneath the surface. This message is for the person who arrived here already feeling that something was shifting. It is for the one who recognized these signs, not as flattering descriptions, but as reflections of experiences they have carried for years. Somewhere along the way, you caught a glimpse of yourself again, and that recognition stirred something that had been waiting quietly for a long time. Take a slow breath and let that settle. You have spent years gathering pieces of a puzzle without seeing the entire picture. Now those pieces are beginning to connect. What matters next is not simply what you understand, but how you choose to respond to that understanding. There comes a moment in many lives when preparation gives way to recognition. It is the moment when a person realizes that what felt like waiting was never empty after all. Looking back, they begin to see that every season carried a purpose, even the ones that made the least sense at the time. Throughout Scripture, those moments often arrived after long periods of uncertainty. A person endured challenges, setbacks, and unanswered questions, only to discover later that those experiences were shaping them for something they could not yet see. The turning point always appeared sudden from the outside, yet it was built upon years of unseen preparation. That same pattern may feel familiar to you. There are seasons when life seems still, when progress feels invisible, and when you wonder whether anything meaningful is happening at all. Yet many of the most important transformations occur beneath the surface long before they become visible. Perhaps what you have been experiencing is not the absence of movement, but movement that has not fully revealed itself yet. Perhaps the clarity you have been seeking has been growing quietly through every challenge, every lesson, and every season that required patience. What feels like delay often carries more purpose than we recognize in the moment. At some point, many people begin to notice a subtle shift within themselves. The ease they once felt as children, the curiosity, creativity, and natural sense of possibility can seem more difficult to access. Life becomes filled with obligations, and the pace of adulthood slowly narrows the space available for wonder. Yet the remarkable thing is that those qualities are rarely lost. They remain present beneath the layers of adaptation that life requires. The capacity for insight, imagination, intuition, and deeper awareness continues to exist, waiting for attention, trust, and reconnection. That is why so many people feel an unexplained longing. They sense that there is more available to them than what they are currently experiencing. They remember, even if only faintly, a version of themselves that felt more connected, more alive, and more fully present. If that longing has followed you through different seasons of your life, do not dismiss it. It may be reminding you of something important, not something you need to become, but something you are beginning to remember. Sometimes the path forward is less about acquiring something new and more about reconnecting with what has been waiting within you all along. Type "I release" in the comments if you feel ready to let go of the belief that your story has already been decided. Let it be a simple acknowledgement that something within you is beginning to shift. Sometimes change begins with a decision that is almost invisible, a quiet moment when you stop carrying an old weight and choose something different. Earlier I told you there would come a moment when these words would move beyond information and become something personal. That moment is here now. What comes next is not meant to be heard casually. It is meant to be received by the part of you that has been waiting for clarity, waiting for confirmation, and waiting for permission to trust what it already knows. Before you continue, take a moment to settle into where you are. Let your spine straighten naturally and place both feet firmly on the ground. Rest your hands comfortably and allow yourself to become fully present. If you are able, close your eyes for a few moments. If not, simply soften your focus and allow your attention to move inward. Picture yourself at the beginning of a new day. Before the demands, responsibilities, and distractions arrive, imagine standing in a quiet moment with yourself. See yourself looking at your hand, taking a breath, and speaking words that remind you of who you are. Notice the difference in that version of you. It is not confidence for show, and it is not performance. It is the calm certainty of someone who has stopped resisting their own truth. There is a clarity that comes when a person no longer argues with what they have always known deep inside. That version of you does not exist somewhere far in the future waiting to be earned. It exists now, beneath the noise, beneath the doubt, beneath every layer that life has placed on top of it. What once felt like a distant goal may actually be a deeper recognition of who you have been all along. Place your hand over your heart and take a slow breath. Feel the warmth beneath your palm and the steady presence of your own life moving within you. Then quietly say the words, "I am awake." Allow those words to settle instead of rushing past them. Let them become a reminder that awareness begins with recognition. Now, I want to speak to the weight you have been carrying. Much of that weight does not belong to this moment. It comes from years of postponing yourself, years of believing there would be a better time, a safer time, or a more acceptable time to fully step into who you are. It comes from every moment you made yourself smaller, every moment you delayed your own growth, and every moment you settled for less than what your spirit was asking for. Begin by releasing the belief that the distance between who you are and who you could become is permanent. The gap is not fixed. It is not your destiny. It is simply a space that has been waiting for awareness, trust, and action to begin closing it. Release the belief that your opportunity has passed. So many people carry the fear that they arrived too late, that the chapter they were meant for has already closed. Yet life rarely unfolds according to the timelines we create for ourselves. Some of the most important moments arrive after long periods that seemed ordinary, quiet, or delayed. Release the habit of apologizing for the things that make you different. The sensitivity, the perception, the longing for something deeper, the awareness that there is more within you than what has been visible so far. None of these were mistakes. They are part of the way you were created. Much of the shame surrounding them was learned from people who could not understand what they had never experienced themselves. Release the belief that someone else must give you permission to become who you are. The approval you have been waiting for was never the missing piece. The authority to move forward has always existed within you. Sometimes growth begins the moment you stop asking whether you are allowed and start recognizing that you already are. Release the limits you accepted simply because they were handed to you. Many beliefs arrive through family history, circumstances, expectations, and old experiences. Over time, they begin to feel permanent, even when they were never true. They are stories, not laws, and you do not have to continue building your future around them. Release the burden of trying to explain every season before allowing yourself to move forward. Some chapters only reveal their meaning after you have already walked beyond them. The need to understand everything can become another form of waiting. There are moments when trust must come before complete understanding. And finally, release the smaller version of your story. Release the identity built around disappointment, missed opportunities, and the belief that you were overlooked. Release the narrative that says you almost became who you were meant to be, but somehow fell short. That story may have felt true for a long time, but it was never the whole truth. It was only the perspective of a person who could not yet see the full picture of what was still unfolding. And now allow yourself to receive what has been waiting beneath the surface all along. I am someone whose life carries meaning beyond what can be measured by ordinary standards. I am someone who sees deeply, who senses things others overlook, and whose awareness serves as guidance rather than burden. What I carry is not an accident. It is part of how I was created. I am the one who chose to end patterns that were never meant to continue. The work I have done within myself is creating a different path for those who come after me. The healing, the growth, and the difficult choices were never only about me. They are becoming part of a legacy that reaches beyond my own life. I am also someone whose wounds became wisdom. The seasons that challenged me did not erase me. They shaped depth, compassion, and understanding that could have been formed in no other way. What once felt like hardship alone has become a source of strength that now carries meaning. There is a part of me that remembers the wonder, creativity, and openness I carried when I was younger. That part never disappeared. It simply waited beneath the layers of responsibility, pressure, and expectation. And now I am allowing myself to reconnect with it again. I came to this moment searching for answers, and I leave it with greater awareness of who I am. I am ready to see with clearer eyes. I am ready to trust what I sense, honor what I know, and move forward without apologizing for the depth I carry. The qualities I once questioned are becoming qualities I understand. Take a breath and notice what has happened within you. Not only the words you heard, but the recognition they stirred. For a long time, you may have carried the tension between the life you felt was possible and the life you were experiencing. Today, that distance may feel a little smaller because something important has been acknowledged. The signs you recognized were never simply information. They were reminders. They gave language to experiences you have carried for years, and sometimes language is enough to unlock a new way of seeing yourself. When a person finally stops resisting their own truth, something begins to settle into place. Allow that realization to rest within you for a moment. There is no need to force anything or rush toward immediate change. Awareness often works quietly at first. A shift begins internally before it becomes visible in daily life, and the effects reveal themselves one decision at a time. In the days ahead, you may notice yourself responding differently. You may trust your instincts more readily. You may hesitate less when you recognize what feels true. You may find yourself making choices from clarity instead of uncertainty, and gradually the distance between who you are and who you are becoming will continue to narrow. If this message reached a place in you that needed to be reached, gently press the like button. Let it become a signal for someone else who may be carrying the same questions, the same longing, or the same quiet feeling. That there is more to their story than what they can currently see. And think of one person in your life right now. Not many people, just one. Someone who has been carrying more than they let others know. Someone whose gifts are visible even when they struggle to see them themselves. Someone who has endured difficult seasons and emerged stronger, yet still feels as though they are waiting for something they cannot name. Hold that person in your mind for a moment. Consider what it would mean for them to recognize themselves more clearly. Consider what might change if they stopped viewing their sensitivity, resilience, or longing as problems to solve and began seeing them as parts of who they truly are. Share this message with them, not because they need fixing, but because sometimes a single moment of recognition can become the beginning of a very different chapter. You understand that now, because you have experienced it yourself. You carried certain truths unseen for longer than necessary, and perhaps this is an opportunity to help someone else see their own. If you would like to continue receiving messages like this, become part of a community of people committed to growth, awareness, and living with greater intention. Surround yourself with those who encourage you to keep moving toward the person you know you are capable of becoming. You were never meant to walk this path entirely alone. Chosen one, you arrived here carrying questions. You leave with greater clarity. What you do with that awareness from this moment forward matters, because awareness becomes transformation only when it is lived. Remember this as you move into the days ahead. You have been seen, you have been guided. The qualities you have carried all your life still belong to you. They have never left, and they are ready to be expressed more fully than before. Walk forward with open eyes and an open heart. Trust the growth that has already begun. Trust the lessons that shaped you. Trust the quiet strength that carried you this far. What you have been searching for is closer than you think, because much of it has been within you from the very beginning. Type "I am ready" in the comments. Let those words mark this moment for you. Let them be a simple declaration that you are willing to move forward with greater awareness, greater trust, and a deeper understanding of who you truly are.